Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to go over 10 more cursed decisions you can make throughout Baldur's Gate 3. I've already made a part 1 to this video, and as it did so well and I really enjoyed making it, I compiled 10 more cursed decisions I could find across the game in order to discuss it here today. Of course, as always, if I got anything wrong or you think there's a decision that deserves to be on this list, let me know down below. Also, if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subbing to the channel and dropping a like, and without further ado, let's get right into it. One of the first choices in Baldur's Gate 3 occurs when you find Laezel again after the crashing of the Nautiloid, but this time she has no sword in hand or a fiery wheel, but she's simply within a cage surrounded by tieflings unsure what to do with her. Most of us will cut the trap down and recruit her into our party and never think twice, but not doing so leads to the loss of one of the most pivotal companions in the entire game. You can shoot down the cage, but this time in unison with the tieflings, and kill Laezel before she has any chance for incredible character development and arc throughout the story. Laezel's crucial role in the story, from being the key that shows us through the Githyanki crash to the revelations about the Astral Prism and Orpheus. Without her, all of this becomes so much more foreign. If you let Laezel die permanently this early on in the game, you'll reach the crash as an outsider, not don the legendary silver sword, and lose out on one of the game's most compelling character arcs, all in the span of a choice you can make in 60 seconds. Your camp will also feel much emptier too, with no sharp-tongued remarks, no over-the-top reactions to story events, or because Laezel doesn't join you. Of course, you also lose out on a strong fighter as well, who for much of the game forms the backbone of the strength of your party, especially early into the game. From this early on, you'll brand your character as one who killed anyone without any second chances, and such a decision will have rippling effects on minor and major story beats across the game. Okay, this decision is one of the worst on this list. Once you've made your way through the Shadow-Cursed lands and into the Last Light Inn, you already understand the importance of Isobel to this region. As a cleric of Selûne, through her magical prowess, she's able to hold back the Shadow Curse and form a little bubble of resistance within the Last Light Inn. So you know that if she dies, all hope in the region dies too. Now, if you're playing as a Dark Urge, this decision becomes even more darker. You'll be tasked by the Butler of Bhaal in camp to prove your devotion to Bhaal by murdering Isobel for a promising reward, the Slayer form. This may give you the motivation to kill Isobel even if you don't know what the reward is, and once you do, the protective shield covering the Last Light Inn will shatter completely. The inn will be overrun with cultists and the Shadow Curse, and you'll be directly responsible for the deaths of all of those inside, and if you can't convince Jaheira that it wasn't you who killed Isobel, you'll also have to kill her. Even if you're not a Dark Urge, this decision is one that you can still make. You can simply walk up to the innocent cleric doing her best to defend the last bastion of hope in the region and just kill her. And arguably this is worse, as there's no reward or strategy in this, but just pure chaos for no reason at all. This decision is one that'll lock you out of some side quests, lose out on some powerful allies, and mark your character as evil incarnate, with the Last Light Inn perishing under your ambition. It's a decision that's very hard to make, and that's why it definitely deserves to be among the other choices in this video. Baldur's Gate 3 has many endings, but one of the game's worst endings can come about as a result of one of the game's most cursed decisions, and that's Gale blowing himself up. Rewinding for a second, from the moment you meet him, Gale's been living with a ticking time bomb in his chest, a netherese orb that has the ability to level cities if it explodes. If you follow through with Gale's personal arc through Acts 1 and 2 of the game, you'll know that Mystra has asked him to sacrifice himself in order to put a stop to the threat of the Absolute once and for all. Of course, most of us would defuse him and tell him they will find another way in order to deal with the Absolute, but from the moment Gale is told of his task, he's conflicted. On one hand, he doesn't want to give up his life, but on the other hand, he's also ready to do whatever it is that the Goddess of Magic has asked him to do. This decision comes about at the climax of Act 2, where after fighting Ketheric in Moonrise Towers, Gale offers to end the threat of the Absolute once and for all right there, by simply detonating the netherese orb in his body. If you go through with this choice, you don't only lose out on Gale, you lose all of your companions, you trigger a literal superhuman-like explosion in the Shadow-Cursed lands, and you yourself will die with the credits rolling. It's one of the game's various secret endings, and it's honestly one of the worst choices you could make in the game. It's truly decisions like this that highlight the player agency afforded by Baldur's Gate 3, even in its most critical narrative moments, and this choice is so cursed that it comes at the cost of your entire save file. By the time you get to Act 3 and into Rivington, you've probably grown accustomed to the songs and tales of the resident camp bard in Baldur's Gate 3, Volo. He's the court jester of the journey, and although he can be pretty annoying sometimes, he's also quite harmless. But one of the game's most cursed decisions will allow you to let him die for no reason at all. When you first stroll past the Southspan checkpoint in Baldur's Gate, you'll see a crowd gathered around a cart on the tracks, with a voice beckoning for help. It's pretty obvious from the get-go that it's Volo, with the Absolute's followers in the crowd promising experiencing purification for Volo, who continues to speak against their ways in word and song. You could attack the cultists like most others do, but you can also just stand there and watch as the flames surround the cart and consume Volo once and for all. Volo will shriek and the crowd will cheer as smoke rises in Baldur's Gate, and in a few seconds, one of the most prolific bards and storytellers in the entire game is just Ash, and all because you intentionally didn't do anything to help him out. As a result of this decision, you'll lose out on one of the more interesting non-permanent characters in the camp, and in terms of the narrative, although you'll not lose much in that regard, without him in the epilogue, it does feel a little strange to celebrate. No one outwardly condemns you for this choice, but there's a hollow feeling in the camp that can't be explained by anything else. I think that's another reason why this choice is one of the worst on this list. It's not strategic or something that will give you a lot more new dialogue to see, but it's just pure cruelty for the sake of it. Okay, this decision might actually be the worst on this list. I honestly didn't even know this was possible until I got a comment about it on my previous Cursed Decisions video, and I just had to look into it for myself. In Act 3 in Rivington, I believe, a courier lady from the Sword Coast Couriers will claim that she's Scratch's original owner. It seems pretty legit, as she even knows his name, but in reality, giving him back to his former owner is one of the worst decisions I believe you can make in the entire game. Of course, we meet the wholesome dog for the first time in Act 1, and with a little bit of compassion, you're able to invite him to your camp, play fetch, and just have yourself a best friend in the camp all the way until the very end of the game. He really becomes part of the camp, and so letting him go is a very hard decision to make in itself. The decision seems harmless on the surface until you talk to the other dogs in the kennels of the Sword Coast Couriers, and they'll tell you straight that these owners are abusive and that the kennel master mistreats them constantly. She'll even threaten to take Scratch away by force unless you pass a persuasion or intimidation check. If you fail the check or decide to give Scratch back, he's gone from the camp for good. No more games of fetch and no more joyful barks, but another dog back into the abusive system of the Sword Coast Couriers. This decision is one of the darkest on this list, as the most cursed outcome is an obvious one, but still it is possible to intentionally give Scratch back to his former owners, and in doing so, you've practically doomed everyone's favorite camp buddy to a life of abuse. After surviving the treacherous Gauntlet of Shar and defeating Ketheric Thorm, if you decide to spare the Nightsong at the end of Act 2, she will join your camp as a powerful and useful ally who will even join you in the final fight against the Absolute. However, one of the game's darkest choices will allow you to sell her out just for a bit of personal profit. In Act 3, you will eventually make your way to Sorcerer's Sundries and meet Loroakan, a powerful wizard who wants to essentially experiment with the Nightsong and find out the nature of her immortality. Naturally, if you go back to camp and tell Nightsong of the wizard's intent, she storms off with fury in order to confront him on top of his tower, and this is where you're given the ability to make one of the most cursed decisions in this list, which is stabbing her in the back. If you betray her, Loroakan will gleefully prepare to imprison her, while the Nightsong is angered at your betrayal and many companions will disapprove of your decision. If you decide to continue with this choice, she'll be trapped within a magical device without any ability to escape her imprisonment again. You'll get a nice reward from Loroakan, but whether this is worth the disapproval of companions like Shadowheart and the dooming of the Nightsong again to imprisonment is one of the hardest choices you can make. You can't just save the Nightsong again after this point, and from this point onwards, she'll just be gone from your camp and of course won't join you in your final fight against the Absolute. This decision is cursed because you know what Loroakan's intentions are for her, and so handing her over to him definitely marks this as one of the darkest choices you can make in the entire game. Yeah, this one is definitely up there, even amongst the most cursed decisions in the game. In Act 3, you'll learn that Gortash's Steel Watch are being built and maintained by the Gondians, who are forcefully enslaved to work for Gortash's will. They've all been imprisoned alongside their families and kept alive only because at the current moment, Gortash finds them useful for his objectives. But if you want to take down the Steel Watch and cripple Gortash before your final confrontation with him, you will need to get access to the Foundry and the codes for its self-destruction. The most moral option here would be to save the Gondians and their families before you do any of this, but you can make a dark choice here and just skip all of that. Simply kill the person you need for the codes and then just explode the entire facility. In doing so, the entire foundry will explode, the Steel Watch will be exterminated, but so will all of the Gondians in the entire foundry. Of course, you're most likely going to want to shut down the Steel Watch anyway in your playthrough, but not helping out the engineers who begged for your help as you wandered through the foundry is a decision that's hard to make even if you're not a big fan of the Gondians. And it's not like this decision comes by accident, but it's a choice that is so intentional, as it's clear that if you don't save the hostages and those within the foundry, they will all die within the explosion of the factory. Although it may be done in order to save the city, it's a decision that will make you feel like an absolute monster, as it's quite clear that you've killed an entire race of people just because you weren't bothered. There's some twisted choices in this list and across Baldur's Gate 3, but this is one of the most evil ones you can make for sure. If you're playing as a Dark Urge, you'll of course discover your connection to Bhaal, the Lord of Murder himself, and to gain the Bhaalist Council's trust, you'll need to do the unthinkable, which is to kill innocent civilians. But this isn't just any killings, but a marked hit list you are given in order to impress the Council with your commitment to Bhaal. If you go through with it and go to the homes of these targets, you'll be able to kill them in cold blood with no reason at all except the pure intention to get into the sanctuary of the Council of Bhaal and get closer to Orin to fulfill your destiny as a Dark Urge. Of course, you can do this without any bloodshed by investigating other Bhaalist murders happening across the city and following the trail that it creates instead. But if you do decide to choose violence, especially as a Dark Urge, this becomes one of the darkest choices you can make. All of it leans further back into embracing what Bhaal wants you to be, and once you go through in killing innocent civilians in this manner, your character is forever tainted as evil. Even in an evil playthrough of the game, the way the game frames this choice and how easy it is to justify makes it one of the most cursed decisions I believe you can make. You're just casually given a hit list of random people living their lives, and if you go through with it and just add a few more corpses to your kill list, you'll get what you want. It's one of those decisions that even in an evil playthrough really cements who your character has now become. The House of Hope is one of the most atmospheric and downright cool locations in all of Baldur's Gate 3. It's the hellish pocket dimension run by the cunning devil Raphael, and it's basically a trophy cabinet for him, as it's filled with stolen souls, cursed relics, and one very unlucky dwarf named Hope. And one of the worst decisions you can make in the entire game can happen here, which is to just not save Hope and leave her here in this hellish world. When you first infiltrate the House of Hope in Act 3 in order to steal Raphael's Orphic hammer, you'll find Hope imprisoned, and when you speak to her, it seems like she's been here for all but eternity. However, although helping free her is the most obvious choice here, it's also entirely optional as well. You can just ignore her cries, take the hammer and leave her there. Even when you kill Raphael, she'll remain imprisoned for eternity, all because you intentionally made the decision not to help her. What makes this decision so cursed, and arguably one of the worst on this list, is that Hope's painted as one of the only pure souls in the entire game. She immediately jumps to risking her life to help you if you free her, and she also provides a bunch of healing help in the final fight against Raphael later on as well. But leaving her in prison despite all of that just feels wrong, as she explains her suffering in detail to you, and there's no reward gained from just abandoning her to a life of imprisonment in the House Hope. Although this game is filled with such dark choices, this is arguably the most cursed choice you can make in the entire game. I think it's really because Hope's suffering is real and preventable, and letting her just rot in the House of Hope for no reason at all is just evil, plain and simple. Out of all the different endings in the game, this is definitely the most tragic ending for Laezel, and if you've seen some of her other endings, that's really saying something. For most of Baldur's Gate 3, Laezel is laser focused on her mission, which again, for most of the game is just blind submission to Vlaakith. But as her arc progresses, cracks begin to form and you can challenge her blind devotion to her queen, and eventually guide her towards breaking free from the brainwashing and to begin thinking for herself. But you can also do the opposite. Late in the game, Laezel has a choice within the astral prism that will affect her character arc forever: rebel against Vlaakith and stand with Orpheus, or simply submit further to Vlaakith and accept the honor of Ascension. But this is where things get even more dark, because Vlaakith doesn't just uplift her champions in Ascension, but she literally consumes them. If Laezel goes down this path, she'll willingly submit and sacrifice her life, body and soul to her Lich Queen. There's no divine power, no throne, but just death, and not a noble one either. It's just servitude wrapped in pure delusion. After this point, she'll just be gone forever. You'll not see her in the epilogue, and everything that she has strived to be will just completely disappear, all for blind submission to a false queen. This choice hits hard because it really is just betrayal, because although Laezel thinks she's doing the right thing, you know deep down that it's really not. It's one of those decisions that really linger, and you wonder whether you should have stopped her from going through with her Ascension, because you know full well that in not doing so, you helped the Lich Queen win, and that's just cursed. And that's it, 10 more cursed decisions you can make in Baldur's Gate 3. I have a lot of fun making these videos, and if you have any more cursed decisions you'd like me to cover in a subsequent video, please let me know down below. Anyway, that's all from me for today's video. If you enjoyed, please consider subbing to the channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 and RPG content, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.